Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines. We got Brad Garlinghouse and footage I've never seen from the YPO at the World Economic Forum 2023. You're going to want every single bit of that. We've also got John Deaton talking about the SEC versus Ripple and the one way the SEC could find a victory. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. The microphone was off. You know, you think I'd have this down by now. Good afternoon, everybody. $1.19 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is up 0.6%. But take a look at this. XRP down here is up 7% on the 7-day at 40 cents. It's moved a bit today. We'll keep an eye on it. We know things are tricky watching where this case could end. We could be days away. We're going to hear from John Deaton on that matter of the case, by the way. $70.3 billion market cap for Tether, and we see 1,700 plus now for Ethereum, and 24.9 and change for Bitcoin. We'll keep an eye on it. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't talked to you about this in a long time, but you can get 81% off of PureVPN right now on a 2-year plan if you click the link underneath the video. But wait, that's not all. Wait, it does get better. Look, PureVPN's done it again. So it's not just about having something help you hide your identity online. They have this product now and a few others, but I'm talking about this one today, and it's PureKeep. Give your passwords a safe home. You can store your passwords, generate passwords, and share secure vault. I'm telling you, this is pretty remarkable what PureVPN is stepping out and doing here, ladies and gentlemen, and they were already good at just being a VPN service. Click that link underneath the video. I'm going to be checking that out later today. XRP whales moved 650 million tokens worth $250 million in 24 hours. Boy, that's a lot of XRP right there. I think that's a lot of on-demand liquidity. Of course, we never seem to know where it all goes, but I am speculating. This right here from John Deaton. I want you to listen very carefully as we go through this, and I'm going to go through this quickly because we want to get to the Brad Garlinghouse videos, and you're going to want every bit of that. Shout out to Brad and Ripple. Hard to not agree that this theory is based in truth. Now listen, if Jesse Powell doesn't sound like a YouTuber, I don't know who does. And I mean that in the best way possible because we've caught a lot of hell for suggesting the same thing. Jesse Powell from Kraken says, I have a theory regulators let the bad guys get big and blow up because it serves their agenda. Destroy capital resources in the crypto ecosystem, burn people, deter adoption, give air cover to attack good actors. The bad guys are actually on side. It says good guys are the enemy, and so on and so on. And you know what? That's exactly what we've said about FTX, is that maybe that's why they were allowed to go and meet with Gary Gensler so many times and get a free pass and not have any due diligence whatsoever to discover what a dumpster fire of a company that was, and be awarded a broker-dealer's license, but then only to really get its tentacles as FTX into so many companies, well over 100 companies, to destroy the infrastructure that exists and give Gary Gensler the talking points that he needs to come in and regulate this space. You have to wonder. You have to wonder. Here's Jesse Powell right here, and shout out to him and DAI for this clip.
Not so much because FTX was critical infrastructure or anything. I think Mt. Gox was much more critical back in 2014 than FTX was today by a long shot. But politicians have been looking for an excuse to hassle us in the crypto industry, and unfortunately, here we are, the victims, and this blow up is somehow going to be pinned on us and be used as a lever to kind of squeeze more juice out of the crypto orange, unfortunately. And we're going to have to fight with everything we can to make sure that, the narrative stays on point, which is that FTX was a scam, a Ponzi, not unlike Bernie Madoff, not unlike Theranos. And, just like Bernie Madoff was not an indictment of the stock market or equities, and Theranos was not an indictment of the medical profession. FTX is not an indictment of crypto whatsoever. We just happen to be the victims in this case. He could have used anything, and I hope that we all stay on message with that and make sure that this doesn't get used as an excuse to shut us down.
I think you can't say it any better. And in fact, Caitlin Long comes out and says it as well, essentially saying this. I'm not going to read the whole thread, but you should. It's on my Twitter. And shout out to Caitlin Long. You know, Custodia Bank took a hard hit from the Fed after being hung out to dry for an answer for months on end, if not over a year. And basically, this is what she said. Today, I'm publicly disclosing for the first time that I handed over evidence to law enforcement of probable crimes committed by a big crypto fraud starting months before that company imploded and stuck its millions of customers with losses. And I warned bank regulators of mounting bank run risk inside banks serving the crypto industry before the bank runs ultimately hit. How many correctly foresaw the crypto lender implosion, warned regulators of impending bank runs, and tried to help law enforcement and stop big fraud? And I'll shorten the rest of it, and only in turn to be shut down and have the door slammed in your face by the Federal Reserve over her Custodia Bank. This is what you get for trying to do things right. This is what you get for trying to help others, isn't it, Caitlin? Isn't this the lesson we're all learning? That if you're not in the secret circle, if you're not the chosen ones, then you will be ostracized. You will be blacklisted, essentially. And it's just absolutely disgusting. And I hope there's a way to get it fixed. Meanwhile, Brazilian government is preparing a new decree declaring clarity for cryptocurrency rules while we have none here in the United States. Bank of Russia is to launch the next phase of digital ruble pilot project with transactions between individuals and businesses. We know China is well underway, and we're still waiting for the United States to get it together here. I happen to think they'll come last, but I just hope they come correct when they come last, because up until now, it's been an absolute crap show. This here is a sign that clear for the way for the ISO 20022, which is a messaging language creating standardization in the payment industry, ladies and gentlemen. And it's basically saying here the Governance Council of ECB has given the green light for ISO 20022 migration in Target 2 on March 20th. This is just a month away now. This removes all uncertainties for the SWIFT ISO 20022 migration on the same date. Now, that is exciting to me because I understand, as I know most of you do, that, you know, in the standardization of delivering messaging data and payment data information, that's what ISO 20022 is. In that standardization is the allowance inside of that standardized messaging to bring in the potential use of digital assets by coding them and using the ISO 20022 standard messaging to do so. Now, that does not guarantee it will happen, but we know the door is open to be able to do that. And let us not forget, too, that whether we're talking about moving and settling value, tokens, and all of this, the real big money maker is data. And the more you can have your protocol or network be decentralized in moving that information, that's the big score. That is the big score. In this particular instance, we know it's about huge, rich data collection, and the standardization that it could bring to the messaging industry could be absolutely revolutionary, and I expect it to be. This right here is Brad Garlinghouse sitting down at World Economic Forum 2023. I had not seen this. Shout out to 801XRP for sharing this. He is sitting with the Young Presidents Organization at Davos, and it is a fantastic conversation with Brad and the gentleman who's speaking with him. I'm going to let this play and let you hear it because this is the first time I heard it, and we always love a chance to be able to hear Brad Garlinghouse speak his thoughts on what's going on with Ripple and the crypto space. Take a listen.
We're here at the World Economic Forum at Davos, and I have the pleasure of having with me Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple. Brad, thank you for being with us.
Absolutely, glad to be here. Thank you for coming to the Ripple temporary office.
Brad, listen, it would be, I guess, a big mistake of me not to start with what is in the minds of everybody, is topical, everybody's talking about it, so let's address it. FTX. There's a collapse, there's crypto involved. How is Ripple different?
Well, so I view Ripple as dramatically different, and actually, maybe I'll start by describing how I think about the FTX collapse. You know, first of all, I don't even think of the FTX collapse as a crypto issue. It's a fraud. Whether you're dealing with crypto assets or, as Bernie Madoff was dealing with lots of different assets, or maybe he didn't have assets, I don't know. But, you know, fraud is fraud, and, you know, I don't know all the details of FTX, and of course the court process will play out. But Ripple is dramatically different in that at the core, we're an enterprise software company. We're selling bank infrastructure that uses blockchain technology to dramatically improve cross-border payments. So today, many of us are very familiar with, you know, what generally is called a SWIFT transfer, a wire transfer. You know, interestingly, by the way, the word wire transfer, the history of that refers to a telegraph wire. Click, 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 click. That's how we were transferring money, and we still hang on to that language. Why is it that it's slow and expensive to send money across borders when I can send an email anywhere in the world for free, anytime? And really, money's just ones and zeros at this point. Ripple selling technologies allow banks, financial institutions to send cross-border payments instantly, very, very, very low cost. So as compared to FTX, you know, it's kind of apples and oranges.
Very good and very nice to hear. You touched upon SWIFT, so let's go there. Is SWIFT a competitor? Is SWIFT something that in a future scenario you would see working with? And what about, you know, transfers that happen through platforms like a Revolut or a WeChat?
Yeah. So Ripple decided early on that we wanted to be at kind of the infrastructure layer, and there's a whole bunch of strategic issues associated with that. One of them, quite frankly, is that if you work with regulated endpoints, that's where all the regulatory frameworks apply. KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering, all the acronyms. If you work just with regulated endpoints, they're making sure that is the case. Companies like WeChat have to do that regulatory work themselves. Now SWIFT, I mean, SWIFT is kind of a competitor. It's slightly more complicated than that because SWIFT is really just messaging. When you send a SWIFT transfer, it's not liquidity. You're actually sending bank messages to banks that have liquidity. So to some degree, Citibank and HSBC, really the top two, JPM, those are the top three liquidity banks. And when you're sending SWIFT messages, you're sending messages to banks to release liquidity and making sure the debits and credits match. So to some degree, really boil it down, Ripple's competing with the liquidity of Citi and the messaging of SWIFT, but in one, because we're both messaging and liquidity. And at the end of the day, you know, again, as I described, you know, SWIFT was developed 50 plus years ago. It architecturally hasn't really changed. It does remain slow, days. It does remain, relatively speaking, expensive. And actually, interestingly, it's quite error prone. And part of that is just, it's a one-way messaging protocol. So if I fat finger Tassos and I put one S instead of two in the middle, I guess you have three S's, but that will bounce back. They'll say, no, that account name doesn't match that person. That's an error. Now, if you use modern technology, you know, you would get a real time, you're typing in Tassos an account number, you get a real time, okay, does that account match? Oh, I mistyped, I fat fingered that name. So the efficiency, you know, we see, instead of a 6% error rate as reported for SWIFT, you see, you know, 10 bips of error, so 99.9% effective. So, you know, we think these are better technologies that can be applied broadly to the vast majority of, frankly, all of the banking system by selling it as a wholesaler, if you will. And therefore, if we don't compete with the WeChats, WeChat could be a customer of ours.
You touched upon something that I think is very relevant and something we've heard a lot about, and that's regulation, right? You look at crypto, and if I look back, crypto started as something that was more anti-regulation, anti-system following the financial crisis of 2008, and yet you are an advocate of regulation. How do you reconcile these two?
You know, when I first got exposed to crypto, there's no question that, you know, the perspective was anti-government. You know, Bitcoin kind of came from that heritage. And I always thought these are amazing technologies, but if you wanted to have the broadest impact for the broadest population, you needed to work with the system and work with governments, and work with regulators. So for really since the beginning of Ripple's life, we've been engaging regulators globally. And that has, I think, been to our benefit for sure, in lots of different jurisdictions. The United States, interestingly, is really behind lots of other countries. And here in Davos, I've made the argument to the various sessions around crypto that we spend too much time talking about the U.S. regulatory framework because it's quite a bit behind countries like the UK or Japan. Well, certainly Switzerland was early and aggressive in codifying and being specific about what the regulatory framework for crypto would look like. And when you're clear about the framework, that allows entrepreneurs and investment capital to flow in because it reduces risk. When you don't know what that looks like, if you're an entrepreneur, one of the first pieces of advice I give people is don't start your company in the United States at this point until the rules are clear. Most crypto entrepreneurs, I find they want to follow the rules of the road, but if you don't know what the rules of the road are, that
you
makes
make
it
them
hard.
up or you don't know where to be.
Yeah, so if you operate and start, we're a very global business. If you were a Swiss company, well, you know what the Swiss regulatory frameworks look like. Even countries like the UAE and frankly even South Africa is getting ahead of the United States.
Very interesting perspective. And you touched upon something, regulation. There is an issue and an open dispute between you and the SEC on your crypto coin, the XRP, whether that is a security or not. And I know that a lot of people are really waiting, and really the outcome is very important. What is your take on it? Where do you stand? What do you see the issues being there?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, it is very important, not just for Ripple, but really for the whole crypto industry. The U.S. is the largest economy in the world. Certainly, we want crypto to thrive as it is in other countries in the United States. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has taken the position that Ripple's sales of XRP constitute an unregistered security sale. And it gets into this very nuanced legal definition of what is a security. We use XRP as a currency. We use it for cross-border settlement. It doesn't give you any rights or title or governance of Ripple. In fact, it's an open source technology that it's hard to think about. So if XRP is a security, it's a security of what company? Who should file the registration statement? If it's an open, should Ripple do that? The other frustrating part, two kind of just anecdotes on this. One, the only country on the planet, and we operate in 50 plus countries. The only country on the planet that has alleged that XRP is a security is the United States, which is odd when Ripple's been profitable. We pay taxes in the United States. I'm a U.S. taxpayer, and it's just kind of like, wow, this is frankly, it's the reason why we are doing more and more outside the United States, both from a hiring. Our second largest office is now London. Now, on the case itself, we think the law is actually clear, and we think the facts are on our side. We think the law is on our side. And so we're actually quite optimistic. The case has been going on for about 2 years. It's fully briefed in district court, federal district court in the Southern District. We expect closure within months. When the judge gets the case, you don't have a timeline. So the judge will take the amount of time the judge wants. But I'm pretty optimistic. I do think it's important for the whole industry, and I'm looking forward to closure.
Brad, if I may, and I really, for the whole industry, I hope that this comes sooner rather than later, because clarity is, as you said, very important.
Okay, now let's roll right quickly into this next clip.
Let's talk a little bit about you. You are extremely driven. You are very successful. What are some of the experiences or leadership traits or anecdotes, perhaps, that you can share with YPOers that have influenced you, or you think would be something well worth for them to consider?
Well, first of all, I'll give a plug for YPO, and I think it's part of leadership is being open to knowing what you don't know. And I think here YPO Forum particularly for me has been a group of people who have been mentors and advisors, and both professionally and personally. But I think that the kind of knowing what you don't know, I try to spend a lot of time listening. I think my team at Ripple would describe me as decisive, but I am very much open to, and frankly, to sometimes their frustration. I'm like, I want the input. Before I make an important decision, I want I'm not going to go into a dark room and just make a decision and come out and say, hey, here's what's going on. And I think that has served us well, particularly in a new industry that's formative. It's kind of the pre-Cambrian era of crypto is, the last 6, I've been at Ripple now 8 years. And, being open to that feedback and always listening before kind of opining, I think has served me well.
And with that, let me ask you one thing, because we can share with YPOers. Blockchain and crypto is on a lot of our minds, right? And most people, unlike you, do not have the pleasure or the time or the know-how or a business immediately related with it to get into it.
Yeah.
How do you think somebody can stay on top of it, can stay ahead of the curve, or what are perhaps trends that you're seeing that YPOers should be aware of?
Well, I think if you kind of zoom out at the most macro level, the novelty of a blockchain is to allow two parties to transact without trust, but with certainty. Let me pull that apart a little bit. Today, there's a lot of examples where you're settling a transaction, but there's almost always an intermediary, a security settlement, frankly, insurance. There's so many examples where, whether it's the financial system, cross-border payments, where Ripple has focused, there's an intermediary there, and it's the commute of trust. If I'm a merchant down the street and I use Visa to commute trust, the merchant trusts Visa, Visa trusts me, they're commuting trust. But Visa's taking how many, 200, 300 bips for that privilege. Anyone who sits in that central counterparty basis could be disintermediated by a blockchain settlement, because now I can settle with certainty whether or not I trust you or not. If I go to the merchant down the street and I send a transaction with Bitcoin or something else, actually Bitcoin's not great for payments, we could get into that, but the merchant knows settlement is final. They have received the Bitcoin. And so you no longer need Visa. Now, to be clear, I'm not predicting the demise of Visa. I think that would be an aggressive statement. I'm more pointing out that if you're in YPO and you're thinking about what do these technologies mean for my business, if you're a business that's in a central counterparty business and you're taking a fee, a toll for that privilege, people will think about ways to put blockchains in that intermediary. I think it applies to government services. I met today with the Prime Minister of a country, and they're very excited about using blockchain for land registry. Think about the title insurance business.
So inefficient.
Big intermediary. They take a lot of value. If we had blockchain-based title management of ownership of who owns which property, arguably title insurance would change dramatically. That's a big industry to think about. Again, for YPOers to think out into the horizon about what these technologies mean. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why I compare blockchain to the early days of the internet. I had the good fortune of coming out of business school in '97 as the internet was kind of, as we know it today, being birthed. Remember, 2001, 2002 was a really difficult, dark time in the internet space. I think the same thing applies in the blockchain world. You're seeing the birth of an industry that I think is going to have broad implications beyond just cross-border payments. And yes, you're going to see crypto winters as we're experiencing. But don't forget, Amazon almost went out of business in 2001.
It's true. It's true. I've taken up a lot of your time. I want to close with one question. We're here at the World Economic Forum. What is the one issue you feel you would like to see addressed here?
Listen here.
Moving Davos to May. Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, that's really it. But that's hilarious. It's so cold in Davos when they go. He says the one suggestion is moving it to May. Well, there you have it. But before we get out of here, let's look at this. John Deaton says there's only one victory the SEC could get in the SEC case, and that is this right here. Basically talking about the idea and understanding that the SEC could win on the idea that XRP was sold as an unregistered security between 2013 and 2017. But that's it. He said, I've said this is the biggest danger to Ripple. I predicted it would be the focus of the SEC's motion for summary judgment. The SEC argued it, but not as much as I predicted. The SEC didn't go transaction by transaction on sales, so the offer is the biggest danger. According to him, this is based on how SEC he chooses to plead the case, that is going by almost all or nothing approach. Deaton believes that if this assertion comes out to be true, there would be no injunction or disgorgement, but rather a fine, regardless how the judges see it would play a huge role. This is really interesting to me because, we understand from John Deaton and Jeremy Hogan and a couple other legal analysts that the case could be segregated into different sections and ruled on in that manner. Look, the truth is we could be days or weeks away from a ruling in this case. James Filan has said that he believes that a decision will come, a ruling or a decision will come in the SEC versus Ripple on or before March 2023. Now, it doesn't mean he has to be right. That was his prediction, like so many others. But nevertheless, it is the next window of opportunity for us to look for. And I'm looking for it just as much as you are, too. I can guarantee you that. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.